And this is a site plan review, so we need a simple majority, 4 of 7 members. Do we have a presentation? Is your light green on the mic? Do you have a mic?
Well, thank you very much. My name is Mike Schaefer with Huntley Associates. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for continuing this on every session. I apologize for the long delay. I think there was some miscommunication on the project as far as what was required and things like that. And we are now hopefully working out the final details. There's still one issue relative to soils on site that we're trying to work with the third-party reviewer to see if we can just have a conversation and come to a final understanding of what is there. I think they misread the soils report, so we're trying to, instead of trying to do emails back and forth, it's just easier to sit down, hopefully, and have a conversation like we're having here, and hopefully we'll get it resolved, and that will be the end of it. But the hope tonight is I wanted to show you some changes that we made. One of the changes was at your request, and I think in our discussions and Carolyn's my discussions, we're hoping that tonight we might be at least get conditional approval so that we can get off your agenda. And then we'll just have to wait and see if we can resolve the remaining items with the DPW. And then we have to go in front of the Conservation Commission. And that hopefully we won't be back here again to present something different. But I do want to show you just a few changes that we made in response to some DEP comments that the Concom is going to be looking for as well. So we addressed those. And you all had one particular comment as well. So I'm trying to figure out which is the best screen. When you try to use that pointer, and it doesn't work on that. That's fantastic. It doesn't work on that. Yeah, it's not a great mouse, but we'll try it. It doesn't move very good. So we made a couple changes here. One of the things that DEP was looking for is that we basically put in an area for sedimentation during construction, just a temporary sedimentation pit while the construction. That's downgrading of the entire site. So we added that on there. We added a track mat across the front entrance. And then we changed some down here on the bottom. I can get this mouse to work where my mouse is. We basically cut back the silt fencing that DEP requested because it was in the stream. So we just kind of moved it back. They weren't major comments, but we added them anyway. And I just wanted to at least show you that's what we did, that we addressed their issues. Okay, so let me just go to the next sheet because there isn't really that much. On this sheet, at the request of one of the meetings that I was not here, I guess the bylaws had changed a little bit, requiring us to put in an additional bike rack. So now we have 4 racks, and that's that circled area that you see. So that's all we did there. And then, and why didn't this show up? Oh. Correct. Yeah, so you can see in this cloud here, I don't know why that keeps coming up. So we have enough, so we have basically 2 racks now for a total of 4 bikes. So that's really all we did on that sheet. And the thing that we're kind of working on right now is we had to put together so the whole issue that's just kind of remaining right now is the stormwater, and the stormwater analysis and all that apparently is fine with some minor exceptions. So we got to have some discussions that we believe there's some redevelopment. The city's kind of looking at it as a whole new development, so it's kind of a mixture of both according to the DEP regulations. But we got to just trying to have a conversation, and hopefully when that conversation happens, this will be all behind us. The other issue that's really the only thing that's really major that we're having trouble addressing right now because a third-party reviewer has looked at our soils report that we did. We had to do some updated soil pits at the request of the DPW and Concom. We did that, and so they're seeing one thing, we're presenting another thing, so we're hoping we can come to some kind of discussion and give them a better understanding of what we're seeing. Worst case scenario, if they still disagree, then we're going to have to all go out there and all do brand new test pits together. But hopefully with the photos that we have and everything else, we can present our case and show them why we did what we did. You know, we believe we use sound engineering judgment. The other engineer's not sure what they're seeing. They even say so in their review. So we're hoping that we can explain it to them to a point where they will understand and then be in agreement with what our position was. So with all that, one of the things that we did change here that I don't know if we need to discuss that here, but we did it anyway. So we made some changes to the area of disturbance. One of the things that we were trying to do when we first started this project, and we talked to your stormwater manager at DPW, is to stay under an acre. And so we were working in that guidelines. And with the latest changes that we made and some improvements based on some comments that we got, we're still under an acre. We're close, but we're still under an acre. And from that perspective, we met that. And we submitted a new, try not to hit close here. We had submitted a new application of exemption to the DPW, and I guess they've accepted that. So once we get the stormwater situation worked out, we should be golden, apart from any comments that the Concom might have. But we have a very nice planting plan, so I'm hoping, you know, I think you've all seen that planting plan. Hopefully they will like that, you know, but there may be some minor comments there too. I don't really know yet. And that's all I really have. That's all the changes we really made at this point. We're just trying to get through the stormwater stuff so that we can get in front of the Concom to show our planting plans, and hopefully after that, the project will be approved and the client will be happy and they can move forward with whatever they want to do. Anybody have any questions or anything like that?
Yeah, Carolyn, I just wanted to ask, is there a stormwater permit from DPW at this point? Based on the correspondence, it didn't seem like there was.
So the whole updated plan that we were waiting for previously was to show the area of disturbance. So the total area disturbance for this project will be less than an acre, which doesn't trigger a separate stormwater permit, which is why you don't have a stormwater permit from DPW. They did issue this exemption saying, okay, this project will be under an acre, therefore this project's exempt from having to file for a separate stormwater permit. So they still need to meet the stormwater standards, and that's where you know, they're close, but there's still some discrepancy about the depth to high groundwater, and so those three things identified in my staff memo about total suspended solids removal, depth to high groundwater, and just evaluating pre and post conditions. I think because they need to prove that to the Conservation Commission, because that's also the same standard for any wetlands permits, it won't change the site. They still need to meet that standard, which is why I'm recommending that you could condition it, close the hearing, condition it, because the stormwater system is where it is, and they also have to show that in front of Conservation Commission. So they're gonna have to do that before they get to a hearing. They've applied, but they haven't been posted for a hearing yet because of those same issues. So I think that, you know, in order to move forward, they're gonna have to show that. I don't see a problem why because all the other site things are dealt with from the planning board's perspective, and the layout is going to basically stay the same. They just need to prove technically that they're meeting those standards, which is why I think it would be okay to close the hearing and issue a permit with a condition of that nature.
Okay, and just to walk through the scenario, so if there isn't agreement with the reviewing engineer about the hydrological soil groups, so if they say no, it should be C, not B, you're going to need a larger detention basin. You're on the threshold of an acre right now, so a larger basin will be more area of disturbance.
Correct.
If you're over an acre of disturbance, we're going to need a stormwater permit. Would they then have to come back before this board again?
Not if it triggers a stormwater permit. It depends on how much of a site change is triggered to do that. I mean, alternatively, and you all talked about it early on in this project, is they could shrink the size of the parking area. Right. So that could be a way to balance, potentially. I don't know, I'm not the designer, but there may be other ways to do that without expanding the footprint of the disturbed area.
I mean, I can give you the scenario. So we know that CC will work. There's no,
Mhm.
there may be some minor pipe changes, some elevation changes and outlets and things like that, but CC will work. That's really not the issue. The issue is the depth of groundwater. I mean, we've taken a position, there is an existing detention basin there, there's an existing drainage swell there, that whose at bottom elevations are, we are slightly higher than they are, but there's some discussion about where that groundwater should really be. So theoretically, those detention basins shouldn't even exist if the groundwater was, right at that level. But we're being held to the standard that we have to be 2 feet below the basin, which is a normal standard in the stormwater design. We're not refuting that at all. But there's some misinterpretations, I think, on the part of the third-party reviewer relative to the soil profiles and where the groundwater actually is. There's actually a perched groundwater level. And then underneath that, there's all this fill. So we gotta have it, hopefully we can just have a conversation rather than back and forth. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're having a lot of problems is because we just can't communicate with anybody. We need to do everything through email and it just takes forever. So I'm hoping we can just get them at the table, have a 15-minute conversation, and then if they still disagree, well, then we got an issue. But we believe that, we have a strong argument, and if they're being reasonable about their engineering assumptions like we were, that we'll be able to show them that that we did everything in accordance with what we're supposed to do. Relative to TSS level, I mean, if we really need to, we've already looked at that. We can put in some catch basins, put in some more. I mean, it's not it's just adding a couple more features in there if we really needed to. We went under the argument that part of this project was a redevelopment project. So by all standards, we don't need to necessarily comply with everything. But if at the end of the day, the city says you must comply, then we're just going to do it. So obviously our job is to look out for our client's interest, to keep the cost down to the minimal that he can pay for. But if we need to add more stuff, then we got to add more stuff. That's, at this point, it's not a function of whether we agree or disagree. We just want to get the project done. I want to keep adding back and forth who's right and who's wrong.
Sure.
So that's what we're hoping for. We'll see.
Okay. Thank you. I want to open it up
Yep.
to the board, see if anyone has any comments, questions. George.
So I remember from one of the first hearings when we laid out some issues, even though it was continued, I think there was something about our recycling and trash containers.
Mhm.
We didn't think they were size appropriate given this big new warehouse setting. Do you know if there was an alteration to the plan?
Yes, there actually were. They were actually I erroneously spoke the first time. It was actually sized for 2, and I didn't realize it.
Okay.
So I just took your word that it was only sized for 1. I didn't really look at it until after. But yeah, we actually made it bigger, a little bigger. But it is sized for 2. We actually went out there and we measured the ones that they had, and then doubled it because they have 2 there now.
Right.
So we made sure that everything fit in there.
Great, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
Then there was some discussion about the trees along,
Took care of that.
took
I
care
mean,
of that.
Karen can probably contest to that, but
That's on the plans now, or is that part of the plan?
let me see if I have that.
To the conscom.
I think-
That would be separate. The planting plan is, for the conscom, is
It's
in the
just
back of the buffer zone.
at the
for the most-
buffers. So
And you guys were talking about the front.
Yeah.
I think I
set.
can show you the trees here if this is the right plan. Yeah, so you can see along here, we put trees along here now, and we made sure this is probably not the right plan. This is no, this is the right one. So yeah, we added trees here. There's a tree there, and we made sure that the proper spacing. I can blow it up here a little bit for you. Let's go. Oh, this mouse is. So you can see we added new trees here, and we have some layout notes that said make sure it's 15 feet, but we actually spaced all this out. So we've got trees here, tree there, and these trees were okay.
okay, great.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question, or I need a clarification, I think, probably from Carolyn. Your recommended or suggested conditions, are those all straight from stormwater standards?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are there other ones we need to consider, or are those the big ones?
No, only, I would say only those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there was one other one just about, before a certificate of occupancy, that the as-built lighting show that it's compliant with the zoning.
Yeah, I just meant the
Yeah.
A, B, and C.
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
the one
yeah.
that-
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's an interesting note about, even though it's a major project, 5,000 square feet, there's no need for a traffic analysis because this is the one area, industrial park, that doesn't,
Uh,
so does our condition speak to a waiver or not really? It's just-
Yes, a waiver, because technically with a major project, traffic analysis is required. But there isn't, like, as you noted, this district does not require mitigation for new expansions. Also, it's warehouse, so it's not gonna, that use in general isn't like a retail
Uh-huh.
traffic generator. But yes, it would be appropriate to note that the waiver, I don't
Okay.
know if it was in the request, it may have been in the request, but I can look it up.
Yeah, I think we talked about it in the first meeting, and we were saying basically that there's really not gonna be any increased traffic there. So the building in front is really where the traffic is,
Yep.
because that's where they have their offices and whatever else they're doing in there. I'm not 100% sure what they all do, but, so the back space is really just gonna be warehouse storage. That's it.
Great.
So you may have a truck coming in once in a while, picking stuff up, dropping stuff off. There probably will be a couple employees. I don't know if they're gonna be there permanently. From the way it was explained to me, there's not gonna be somebody stationed there, because it's not gonna be like a, something like Coca-Cola or something like that.
Right. Right.
We've done some work over, well, quite a bit of work over there, and there's a lot of trucks.
All right, anything else from the board? If not, I'd like to open it up for public comment. If there's anyone in council chambers like to make a comment? Not seeing anything. Anyone on Zoom could use the raise hand function.
I don't see any.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything on Zoom. There's been a motion made to close public comment.
I'll-
Discussion? Second? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Can I see a show of hands? Unanimous. Okay, we've closed public comment. So now we can kind of discuss conditions, waivers. So I heard the waiver about traffic mitigation. There's also, we have in our staff memo, another condition to consider. Prior to construction, submit final construction plan showing compliance with comments herein and DPW comments. At least 2 feet of separation from the bottom of the stormwater basin to seasonal high groundwater. 80% TSS removal, which will likely simply require connection of the existing parking area into the proposed storm scepter treatment chamber that they've proposed to filter the new portion of the site, and recalculation of the pre and post runoff standards using inputs of existing soil types that are the same as proposed. Currently, they've used C soils for precondition and B soils for post-condition. There's also another condition to consider. Prior to CO, submit lighting as built showing light levels that are in compliance with zoning for color temp and illumination. So with all of those said, are there any other conditions that we might want to consider at this time?
Can I ask a question? Would that be appropriate? Just
Uh,
about your
well, we're-
conditions?
We're closed for public comment. So Carolyn, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't take any more comment from the applicant or questions. Yeah.
Nothing else here?
So we're good with the conditions as listed?
happy to make a motion if you think we're ready.
Only if you can hit your green button.
Good job. So I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review by Michael Safer of building and site changes at 106 Industrial Drive, Northampton, map ID 24B-88. With the, I believe there were two conditions mentioned along with a waiver of the traffic analysis.
Great. Motion's been made
A second.
and seconded. Show of hands. Unanimous. Good luck with your project.
What happens if these conditions that you have, right, get the third-party administrator or reviewer says, yeah, you're right, these don't apply. But I have conditions now that you have voted on. That's what I was gonna ask. You know, your conditions are pretty specific relative to rather than just getting stormwater approval. So if those conditions, for example, that you just mentioned, that are the key topics of discussion between the DPW, the third-party reviewer, and our office, if after we discuss these with the third-party reviewer, and he or she, or actually they're both women, they take our position to be correct, do I need to come back again because these conditions are in place?
I mean, technically you would, but I don't, I mean, you have, those are the baseline standards and they've been the standards for over 25 years. So I can't imagine that they would waive the standard. These are just the basic stormwater standards.
Okay.
So they're not fabricated by the zoning or the planning board.
Yeah, I know their standards. I'm just making sure, I mean, it's not the standards themselves, it's the data that we were talking about. And if they say, yes, we agree with your data, then we're still meeting those standards, I guess, is what you're saying. Okay. I didn't know if there was anything in there about, because you mentioned something about the soils type.
It's just you have to show that you're meeting pre and post conditions. It doesn't matter what.
Well, you mentioned about using the same soil type, and that's one of the issues. So, but,
If you're meeting the standards, you meet.
good. That's all I want to hear.
All right, good luck.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, so next on our agenda, Carolyn, I think you have some language, maybe some edits to the form-based code.
Yes. So
Oh, can you turn on your, yeah, go.
So based on the conversation, I guess 2 weeks ago, let me just pull that up because that got shut down too. What is that, Adobe? Here we go.
I missed the meeting 2 weeks ago. Most of you were here. It was a robust discussion.
We missed you, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It was good.
Let me just stop. Add it up. Okay. Come on. Okay. So let me screen share. And this time we have a map.
Yes, no, I studied it.
Okay. So, we discussed some concepts at the last meeting. So I tried to put those together in the context of the existing code and where those would be stricken and, and just sort of to lay it out for you guys to come back to. So here is the map, of course. Again, the green boundary on the north and the south are the gateway districts. So flanking each side on the north side, King Street to from the bike path crossing just south of Stop and Shop down to North Street. And then from North Street with a big roundish bubble around Central Business District is the Central Business Side Street. And then Then the very center is the pink, which is the core, which is basically the buildings fronting Main Street and Pleasant and King for one parcel deep along Main Street for the most part. And then, of course, another gateway on the south going from Holyoke Street down to the just the dike, basically beyond the roundabout. So I think so the one thing, the way I ordered this, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in this, but I think the first thing that comes up is the issue about waivers. And there was a question that came up at the last meeting about you all wanted to sort of see what the language was for waivers, because that's come up as like, when is a waiver appropriate, and the guidelines versus standards. So I just plugged that in at the top there. And that comes from, so there are two basic sections, chapter 21, which sort of sets the framework and the overall guidance for the form-based code. And then section 22 goes into the specificity within each gateway side and core district. So this language is in the overarching section. So I don't know if you want to discuss each of these one by one, or do you want me to run through the whole document?
So just talking about this first paragraph here, so there's standards which require strict compliance, but we can,
Yeah.
an applicant can still request a waiver from the standard.
Yeah.
And then there's a guideline which is strongly encouraged, but doesn't require a waiver per se.
Right. It just helps the board make a determination about whether a permit or project meets the overarching objectives of the form-based code and for downtown.
And I haven't done a thorough reading of the code. Do we feel like it's very, I can't think of the word, but I'm losing it. But are all the standards very clearly standards, and all the guidelines are very clearly guidelines, and there isn't, is it consistent?
So, I mean, one of the ways maybe to think about it is, if it weren't for the fact that you might have a project that triggers site plan just by itself because of the size, so 2,000 square feet and beyond, which is a pretty low threshold to come to
Mhm.
the planning board. But if someone proposed something that met all the standards, they could theoretically just go right to the building department. And so there would be so if it was 1,999 square feet and it met all the standards, there's no, subjective or evaluative review of that. It's just very clear. That's sort of what these standards are intended to be. So you do this, it's the cookbook, you make your cake, you do it just right, and it comes out and it's a beautiful cake, and you have gone through the permitting process. But if you want to, make your own version of the cake, then you come to the planning board, and it's a standard, but the planning board says, oh, this other way you're baking this cake is great. We didn't think about that. You can, and then you have guidelines to help you think through, does that waiver of a standard make sense? Because these are the overall objectives of the ordinance. And so that's where, the board has the discretion, because the whole idea was to set it up, because who knows what creative ways people can address the objectives.
Question. You said the way you framed it was theoretically, if someone sticks to all the standards, they don't even have to come to the planning board. And my question is, so how often has that happened since form-based code was created?
Maybe zero, because
That I was wondering, yeah.
because anything over 2,000 square feet automatically from another section of the zoning says has to go to the planning board for site plan. And that's what I was talking about. That's a very low threshold. So in downtown, when people are making investments, it's usually a much bigger investment than 1,000 square foot, addition. But theoretically, I mean, I could maybe potentially think of something that's less than 2,000 square feet, but it could happen potentially.
Thanks. Do you want to
Sure.
keep moving?
Yeah. So then the next section is not fully baked. I will say that now. But this was the discussion about adding some guidelines and review criteria for structured parking. So because it doesn't specifically say that there's a structured parking is allowed, the board discussed last time and thinking back to previous projects where this came up, there weren't really any rules about that. So this is not, I just started putting this table in here to add, there is a section in 21.7 for new building types. So it was reserved just for this, I guess. So I think it might be appropriate to plug it into this section. Doesn't, that's a minor detail. But I started identifying sort of some of the things that might be considered in those. And what I want to do is spend some more time looking at other communities and how they deal with designs of structured parking before finishing that conversation. But so really it's more of a placeholder at this point. And also I want to communicate with the architects that have been working already on the permits to sort of understand what were some difficulties for them and what we might consider in terms of putting language in that would make it clearer.
At Holly and State Street.
Yeah, and 3 Elm,
and
for
3 Elm,
St. Mary's, yeah. So,
So about the halfway down, it says distance no, I'm sorry, buffer from the public way.
yeah,
You have a proposal of 10 feet.
yeah.
But on neither Hawley or 3 Elm, do we have 10 feet from a sidewalk, right?
No.
So that's what you're proposing is that if,
I'm something to maybe think about.
Okay.
Because in the parking section, there's a requirement that parking be stepped back, 10 feet back, so that there's a little bit of, separation from parked cars not coming right up to the sidewalk. And so I think just sort of thinking about that it might make sense in a structured parking situation to have a similar kind of, because it's not the same kind of interaction that you have with a building that's an office entrance
Yeah.
or an apartment entrance or something like that. So again, sort of a placeholder to think about
yeah.
as opposed to suggesting a specific thing right now.
So if, say we went with 10 feet, what would that look like in like State Street or Phillips?
So it might mean that the building would have to be set back further.
Yeah, the entire building would have
Yeah.
to be moved back.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they would come and ask for a waiver from the,
Right, or that maybe there's a different way to address, I mean, the idea is that you're not feeling like you're right up against a car, as you're walking on the sidewalk.
Is the covered parking down here 10 feet away from the,
No.
well, that's fine.
Well, right, I mean, so that's why I think it's a good debate to have, is like the existing, and the parking garage on Gothic Street as well is right up next to the sidewalk. It's a shorter building, so maybe it's not so much having it right there, but maybe it's not so tall. Maybe it has to step back. And I think on the Elm Street one, they did step back
I mean, I've never
after
seen a
this.
parking garage. Anyways, you
Yeah.
work it out, but I've never
Yeah.
seen a parking garage. Parking garage has been is a building like any other building built with cars in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to look at a bunch of examples, what it would feel like, what makes sense, maybe that doesn't need to have anything.
yeah. So just so not to drill down right into this one, but just in terms of pedestrian safety though, like on Elm Street, if that's really busy, or Hawley, having the entrance or exit right there on that sidewalk on State Street is a little dicey. On the parking garage behind Thorns Market, there's not that same kind of pedestrian traffic.
You mean the vehicle entrance?
The
to
vehicle entrance,
okay.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's probably where that 10-foot setback would come in. So
Right.
you could, so a car is not just like leaving a building onto the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay. So that,
But what you're saying is, I mean, that's how parking garages are built now in cities, right on the sidewalk, basically.
Yeah,
And maybe they honk their horn when they're coming out, maybe they don't.
Or they have automatic alarms that
Yeah,
go off.
yeah.
Just
I mean, a
scare
lot
the
of the time
bejesus out of pedestrians.
By definition, the door, like, when I just came out of the parking lot at UMass Worcester, there's a gate there that goes up and down, you know, there's a lot going on
Yeah.
for you to, for pedestrian.
Right.
And, didn't, you know, not get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
What do we think of, so A here, we have ground floor openings along street front, minimum. Openings may partially screen view of vehicles. So I felt like in some of these projects we've looked at recently, we liked that the facade of the building was being broken up, but we also liked that the cars were being screened. Like we didn't want it to just be an opening through which you saw cars. We thought the wood slats looked good.
Yeah.
So it almost seems more like an openings shall partially screen view of vehicles instead of like a may there.
And the 50% alludes to 50% of each opening or 50% of the
building footprint.
expansion of the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it could kind of match the fenestrations above, like whatever the form-based code says about
Yeah.
windows that are required, you kind of want to have that same massing.
That's where the
On the ground
50% in
floor.
this version originated, but, yeah.
So maybe more to like, you know, be in relationship to the other building openings.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that way. I like having the windowsill height. Although that might make it tougher with the 50% requirement too, if you're, you know. So I don't know if we could relate more to what's above it than
Yeah.
the same 50%. Because I do think the 4-foot sill height is important, but
Yeah.
other windows on the building might be, you know, deck to deck or something, like big windows.
Yeah.
Because that's the architectural style, and we wouldn't want that on the ground floor necessarily.
Right. But there are also differences between ground floor and upper floors anyway in the patterning and the,
Okay.
but that's a good point to look at.
And then I wonder if the buffer plantings would help keep the building off without saying it has to be 10 feet exactly. You know, you'll have the sidewalk there. And sidewalks sometimes are in the public way, sometimes aren't. Right? And then maybe if we have a distinct buffer distance to the building, that could kind of set it versus a strict distance off of the property line. Because again, I felt like on State Street, I remember we kind of liked that they had plantings along the facade to help soften it from the pedestrian experience.
But room ended up being very limited.
Yeah, for sure.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to require a little more space on that. Possibly.
But if the sidewalk had been in the right of way, and then we required 10 feet, that would be like a lot of
Yeah,
space.
that's not, no, yeah.
Versus, and if the sidewalk had been completely on their property, then 10 feet, you know, you have a 6-foot sidewalk and then you have 4 feet of landscaping, that seems better.
Yeah.
To me, like more appropriate.
Mhm.
So like that situation could change depending on where the sidewalk is in relationship to
Yeah.
the right of way.
Illustrations would be great.
I won't be
Right.
drawing them. I will be plucking them from elsewhere.
And one more thing on this, the distance between openings, 10 feet maximum, that seems like a lot.
10 feet between windows.
No,
Oh, between-
a 10-foot blank space.
Yeah, so we're just talking,
Like,
Uh,
so if this is a window, then
Yeah.
10 more feet to another, or window
Okay.
opening.
okay, all right, sorry, I was reading that wrong.
Okay.
Right, the
Well, we
opening
can
isn't like the
put-
exit that the cars drive through, it's just kind of like the window into the parking area.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's
Okay.
probably where graphics would help.
yeah, I know, no, well, I'm thinking about the State Street one where they have a lot of slats and various things going on, so,
Yeah, so all of that was one window, right? And
Yeah.
then there'd be wall space and then another one. And that wall space is what this would speak to between the areas that had the slats.
okay,
Why is that important?
It's about creating as minimal blank wall as possible along, so as a pedestrian, you're not feeling like you're walking along a big expanse of, brick wall or something as you're on the sidewalk.
Okay, so it's you couldn't have just wall with no windows? Is that what?
For more than a
that-
10,
Okay, so, all right,
Yeah.
I was reading that the opposite way, that you had to have you had to have wall and not windows. So I just
Yeah.
read that wrong.
graphics.
Just one more quick thing on the buffer plantings.
Mhm.
Same elements as required for parking lot buffers. I'm assuming the parking lot buffer stipulation, they're spelled out in more detail, or is it? part-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that there's a whole section on parking lot buffers and the mix of material, a mix of planting species of various heights and dimensions. So instead of trying to repeat it here, and ultimately it would make sense to put the section reference,
Cool.
so you could hyperlink to that.
And then just generally, so we're talking, I wasn't a board member for the state meeting, but I do remember watching that partially on YouTube. That buffer planting would be in the city right of way? Or
Not necessarily, probably, and probably not.
probably not?
Yeah.
Are there any instances where it would be, like, theoretically, if this was to be added to the code? Like,
Well, for
I-
example, if utilities were running closest to the road, then a sidewalk had to be closer to the building, then maybe the planting would be under the utilities or something.
Yeah, or if the right of way didn't allow enough width for the sidewalk to be entirely in the right of way, so the sidewalk had to straddle the property line, and then between the sidewalk and the building, you would have, so that would be private. Sorry, you're asking the opposite. I guess there could potentially be a scenario where there's a wide right of way.
yeah,
That's what you're asking. If
I-
there's a wider right of way and everything, the sidewalk can fit in the right of way, but yet the building, instead of being right up next to the right of way, it would have to be stepped. Well, either way, probably not, actually.
Okay.
Think about it.
no, I'm just wondering if there's any instance where we're like adding, if the landscape space becomes like city property and not building, not,
Yeah.
like,
I think even if there were strips of something that were associated with the building, it would be the property owner's responsibility to maintain it.
okay,
And of course, DPW would have to sign off on plantings, but it's typically the opposite, where there's not enough right of way and actually the planting, so the trees and other things are in the right of way, but the property owner is responsible for maintaining them.
Okay.
Like over on, I mean, really, we're not talking about this area, but on North Street, there's between, when they redid that land, there was the sidewalk, and then there's those weird catch basin things.
Swales?
Swales that people filled in because they didn't like maintaining big swales.
I didn't hear.
Well, they did build it, so there it is.
Yeah, pretty much as Carolyn said, the city doesn't like anything put in the easement alongside the street, you know.
Yeah, no.
That's a pretty hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
You know, people do plant there.
But there are, I mean, all over in existing conditions, for example, in residential districts, there are grass strips in the right of way
Yeah,
that are
but-
required to be maintained by the property owner. So that wouldn't be different than that, right? So if you have a grass strip in front of your house, DPW is not gonna mow it, you're gonna mow it.
No, but there's no requirement. There's no requirement to mow that strip, even in the business district. Snow removal of the sidewalk, but no,
But you're not allowed to have a height over a certain height, so if,
a snowbank or.
No.
Bushes
Wait.
like planted.
Grass.
yes.
Yeah, if you just let it grow up, it's unsightly.
All right, we
Moving
digress.
on.
Before you start.
Okay, so this is to be continued, obviously. All of this is probably. Okay, so the next table is we're just focusing on Central Business Side Street District, which again is the area immediately around Main Street, the orange, I guess, bubble. And so I put this section of the table in just to give, because it's under lot standards, and if you scroll down to H under lot standards, you know, this is where we talked about transitional buffer widths. And so I just plugged this in because I think there were a lot of different ideas. I'm not sure we honed in on a specific one, but I planted at 15 feet, and I'll show you, relates to the height, which is in the next table right below it. So, you know, I think, and sorry, and step backs. So I think all of these, the height in the lot standards and then the building massing sort of go together in terms of thinking about maybe tweaks to the buffer. So, you know, if you remember last time, there was this discussion about reduction of the buffer and whether or not it was valid to allow a fence to be as an alternative. You could get your buffer reduced down to 10 feet. There was discussion about, well, should it just stay the same and have, you know, a fence is not an appropriate
Yeah.
alternative. And then what should that dimension be? So I just threw in, you know, 15 feet, but no ability to really reduce that, and it has to be planted. And then, you know, thinking about the language for heights and the step backs. And there was a discussion about, should the step backs, right now, they're only on the front, but should they be on all sides, front, rear, and side? Should they just be rear and side? So that's what that other.
Carolyn, can you explain, so under height, minimum, maximum, minimum, maximum, that's what it is. So minimum 30 feet, maximum 70 feet. Okay.
And then, so then I'm wondering, except when the parcel's in a transitional buffer, and the height for the parcels with the transitional buffer should be 30 and 55, or?
Wait, this phrase transitional buffer, where'd that come from?
Code. It's sort of, it means a buffer, the transition between the urban residential C district and the CB.
Does the code actually define how wide the buffer is?
Mhm. It says you have to be 20 feet, but you can reduce it to 10 if you put a fence in.
Oh.
And so that was the discussion last time.
Why are we talking about height in the transitional buffer when a buffer is basically a setback, isn't it?
So it, I think what I was trying to say is, except when it abuts that area of transitional buffer? Should the height be different?
I think buffer in this case is zoning, like the buffer between zones.
Yeah, yeah, that's the problem. So we should probably use a different word. But the height piece is just, with properties that are next to a different zone,
Right.
keep the buffer, but maybe should the heights for those parcels that just rim, the edge, should they be
Change.
lower,
Yep.
or should there be a step back on that side?
Right. And I remember thinking at the time, and I still think that the presence of even a 30-foot high wall at the buffer point kind of allows the buffer to serve kind of a minimal function. It's okay. It's better than nothing. But in terms of the effect on the resident on the other side of that buffer, that 30-foot wall is there regardless whether it's 20 feet away or 10 feet away. And it's overwhelming. So I don't feel like the buffer is the real main point here for me. It's much more how high to a setback so that, again, putting myself in the mind of the resident who's next door, the ground floor stuff is a done deal. There's just no way to, unless we were to set the whole thing way back, and that's not gonna do it either. But I don't find this buffer thing all that important, I guess is what I'm saying.
Can you remind us what the setback is for, I guess, urban residential C is basically the abutting residential district?
There's a 10-foot side setback in urban residential C.
Okay,
And then the allowed height in urban residential C is 55 feet.
Right.
right.
And a
So,
standard 3-story, single-family home could be 30 feet, so,
so we're saying it would be more than the setback, more than the residential setback, whether that's 5 feet more or 10 feet more is kind of the current
yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure I get the value of that, but go ahead. And then the point is because residential can go up to 50 feet, 30 feet?
55.
No, 55 in URC.
I thought you just said it's 30 feet and C.
He said 30 feet.
Oh,
No, no,
You said 55.
55, okay. Okay.
So I like the idea of a step back that matches the maximum height in urban residential C, which is 55 feet. I mean, that kind of seems fair. I think the step back could just be along, whatever property line that buffer is. I don't know if it needs to,
whatever the adjoining property.
yeah, so,
But otherwise, you're gonna make all the property's gonna look at pyramids.
right,
It's gonna look
yeah,
strange.
yeah. And I mean, the architect can certainly decide, like, having a step back on one side of the building isn't architecturally pleasing and they want to do what they want to do. But to me, I just want to make sure that for the abutting residential zone, they're not seeing more than 55 feet.
Right.
And then maybe we do step them back because it could be a bigger building than a residential structure.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's 5 feet more or 10 feet more.
And then
Whatever.
as far as the front, we scratched our heads about why that had been created in the first place and whether we really felt it was important, especially in terms of trading off square footage,
What was the setback in the front?
Right now, there's a requirement for a setback in the front.
A step
Step
back
back. Yeah.
after 50 feet. The idea, it may not, the idea was, and you can see it in the graphic in the existing code is sort of, if you have a narrow street and you have buildings right up to the property line, it might relieve more, a canyon effect, you know, if you've got tall buildings, but you're stepped back here. The reality is we probably don't have very many of those. So, I mean, we would have, like, if you really sort of built out all of the side streets, potentially, but I think there's such a variety of street width and existing building types that it would be,
Downtown Florence and Northampton, the street's so wide that you don't get that canyon effect.
Yeah,
They go all the way up.
Market Street is one that I think of when I think of having a canyon effect. It's so narrow.
yeah.
But no, not really.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
I mean, so, but that was the original, that was what our consultants had recommended to us.
Yeah.
But if, you know, I mean, that's where, that's how we got here.
Yeah.
So in this table, Carolyn, under building massing, the L says height, minimum, maximum.
Mhm.
So the minimum building height in this district is 30 feet. So somebody needs to build something of a certain minimum mass.
Right.
Can't have a one-story building.
Right. And there's also, so you see the ground floor height, 12 feet, so you, for the first floor, and the upper floor heights can be 20. So this is, you know, about a 3-story building is your minimum, 2.5, 3.
I'm gonna build on a lot in this zone. I have to make it at least 3 stories, 2 stories with a big.
So like the Goggins building as it is right now cannot be built.
Yeah.
And why, I mean, it's, someone wouldn't do it, but why not?
So many buildings on King Street couldn't be built then. The Borowski Insurance Building,
Right.
yeah.
And so the idea is really, originally, we extended central business down
Yeah.
north in order to allow flexibility and continuation of sort of urban density. Those weren't, at that time, they were built when everything was sort of more centralized and on Main Street. And so if you want to continue that sort of context of urban character, you want to have more than a 1-story building. So if you think about, and it's really more about sort of allowing development and of various scales to expand just beyond the Main Street for opportunities for people to invest. But 1 story is kind of, is a waste of space.
Because we're looking to densify downtown.
Yeah.
No, I got it. It's just,
No, that is a good bottom
I
line.
can't imagine someone doing it, but, you know, I can also, someone couldn't, and so there has to be 2 stories, like you couldn't just build a 30-foot tall building.
No, you could.
Well,
You could have a
Yeah.
1 floor.
I mean,
I mean,
Rock
right,
climbing space.
a performance venue, yeah.
Okay. But they're like, if, again, if density was the goal in such a thing, I mean, rock climbing is all great and all, but I'm not, it's certainly in my mind no better than than the Goggins 8-foot building. In terms of value to the city.
It's only so many rock climbing gyms we can put.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
I mean, my point is that I think that, like, I'm thinking about this really relative to like the car dealership sort of model. That's the only thing I can think of outside of a rock climbing gym that goes up 30 feet. That's a single story, but like, it just seems like having something that mandating 2 stories if the goal is density is a good thing.
I mean, or you could think of a hotel with an atrium, you know, on the front, on the street,
Okay.
that you have a tall first floor, but you might have a balcony or something like
Okay.
that in that space.
So was the 55 question mark mean that you were encouraging us to even consider a lower maximum height overall?
I put it out there because it came up for discussion. I'm not necessarily encouraging it, but I think it's been brought up.
At least in that, in abutting, in properties that abut the next, the residential
Right.
district.
Right. And so if you think about, though, the context of 3 Elm Street, I mean, I think that's a perfect location for a much taller building and sort of but it's the same district. So I think, I'm not encouraging it. I just it's almost like just a note that I'm putting this here because it was part of the conversation, but that I think it probably deserves just some more fleshing out in the board. And it could be, you make a recommendation about changes and it goes forward to city council and maybe there's not, an interest to keep it the way it is or so.
Yeah, I feel like for one, I prefer the step back route at 55 feet or whatever we ultimately decide versus
Mhm.
a strict maximum
I do
height.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the sides and rear, get rid of front. Step back.
Well, so for me, I don't need sides and rear. It's if you're abutting a residential district on the rear, then that's where the step back could be. Or if you're abutting on the side, that's where the step back could be. Or if you're abutting side and rear, then you would step back on both.
Okay, so step backs only in abutting
Only on
residential
the,
districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Only on the side abutting the residential, so it's, yeah. You'd be both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
But just to reduce the mass that the residential district experiences.
and we could see what the council says about eliminating the front.
Right.
Setback, and because I think we've concluded there's not huge argument in favor of it.
But Carolyn, do we have that in the other zones? We have that step back on the front?
Only in the gateway.
So the gateway has that.
I think so.
Currently.
I attached the table. I'm pretty sure it does.
So that just might be what the city wants the look to be. So I don't know if we keep
It
the
is
front
in the
step
gateway.
back
Yeah. But again, yeah, so.
and then add it to what any side abutting
I
residential.
could see why it
Yeah.
might be more important in the gateway and less important in Side Street.
More important in gateway?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Gateway's more, isn't Gateway kind of more of front facing?
Yeah, you see that first?
On the other hand, the gateways are King Street, which is a wide cross-section, and Pleasant Street, which is a wider cross-section, versus Market Street or Holly Street. So really, I would argue Gateway, you don't need it on the front because you're already wider. So it's about the relationship of how wide the street is and how tall the buildings are. And the narrower you get, you want maybe shorter step back. So I think I would argue that Gateway shouldn't necessarily be on the front.
So let's just get rid of front.
Relative to the width of the road.
Yeah, maybe I'll think of that.
Well, I mean, that.
Well, Gateway is,
Ideally,
that's
that
your
would be.
concern.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
You know,
Gateway is pretty clear. That's
Yeah.
that. The other one would be, yeah.
Trying to look. So Lumberyard, is that in Gateway or Side Street?
That's the last one in Side Street.
That's Side Street, isn't that like literally the definition of gateway? The lumberyard?
Well, the Gateway district starts at Holyoke Street.
Oh, okay,
So it's from there down to the dike.
got it, okay.
Yeah, okay. So we don't really have any step back examples currently in the in
Side Street.
the southern section of
Yeah.
Gateway.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then there's the Wayfinders building across, on the opposite side that's 70 feet tall.
Is that the Live or whatever.
Yes.
That was what was the Northampton Hotel.
Pleasant Street Hotel, yeah.
The one.
Pleasant-
The other, it was the other thing before.
The other
it
thing.
is Now.
Live 155.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't have a step back on it. But those were both before the form-based
Yeah.
code? Yeah.
I can't think of any building that has a step back.
The one building that will is gonna be the new one here.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I think
Yeah,
looks really good on it, makes it,
yeah, you mean 3L?
No,
no, the one that they're
Oh, the
building
one right
for
next
the
door.
staircase.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
again, that's also a narrow street,
Is this
Right.
Gateway here?
side street. Yeah.
Do any of these discussions impact Florence Center?
No.
Or there's no adjoining districts that,
Well, Florence Center, well,
Own
we can
district.
look. There are, they do about the URB. They don't have URC in Florence Center. But we haven't taken a
so we might
dive
just, yeah.
into that.
As we start firming this up, we might just want to look at that to make sure we're not setting a precedent for here, but not up there.
That's my knowledge.
What, can you remind me, does Florence only have a central business district or does it have other?
And they have Florence, Village
Core
Center
center? Okay.
and Florence Village General. So they have a C and a G, but
Okay.
they're different names.
So we might want to look at the general.
It's the village. The same,
For the record, I lived in Leeds for a long time.
the same form-based, there's no form-based code for Leeds.
All right.
So this last point under O is the changing the threshold, possibly? Under 6, rather.
Under,
Oh, 6 bulb. Oh, sure, yeah, the building bulb. So would be changing, so we talked about this as well, that, anything, just basically consolidating, anything over 5,000 square feet is the major site plan. And then the next line is new construction or addition of, with footprint, for single use or unit between 10 and 90,000 square feet as a planning board special permit. So this would be a footprint for like a big box retail or something like that, is special permit. Just to clarify the language, that was the intention. And then anything that's that's a single use footprint over 90,000 is not allowed at all. So
What does
I
site,
could-
what does site M stand for?
major, site plan major project
Okay.
versus intermediate project. So it's the same level threshold we have currently, where 2,000 square feet is an intermediate site plan review, so just about the technical details of site plan. 5,000 square feet is a major site plan, which kicks in stormwater and traffic analysis. And so in this table, we've just said, anything over 5,000 square feet, just to clarify, just mirrors the other section of the code. And then moving down, I just highlighted the 6 feet, just because this is where it talks about the buffer, dimensions. So in that, and the 10-foot buffers, you have to, the screening, the material has to be 6 feet. And, as just sort of noting one of the details that would be in that transitional buffer.
Yeah, we were talking last meeting about how ineffective that was in many cases. Although for someone on the first floor of a residential house, it is nice to be able to look at something green rather than a building wall.
Yeah, and then this one, I don't know why it came up. I know it, maybe I just did it in Gateway if I didn't catch that, but do you see the footnote number 9? I need to delete this. It's reset, that's where it says you can, wave it down to 10 feet with a fence.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna delete that footnote for the district transitional buffer width.
And this is the same district transitional buffer that you changed, or that could be 15 feet
Right,
up above.
yeah. And then, but we'd want to keep the parking buffer width footnote, because in that case,
This is a surface lot.
yeah, so you, with a fence or a wall, you could have potentially accomplished the same thing as a deeper setback, just that
Yep.
sort of separation to the pedestrian.
And so what does that section, that width reduction section say? It can be half as wide with the fence? Is that how they're
Yes,
going from
can be
20 to
reduced,
10?
yes, yes.
So it can go from 10 to 5 for the parking lot, for the parking.
And a
Yes.
fence is not a vegetative fence. When we say fence, it's only
Structural.
structural.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next section is, that we talked about this with solar arrays. So just adding 2 different types of, it would be allowed by right if it's behind a structure versus, if it's ground mounted next to or in front of a structure, then that would be the trigger for planning board. And then I think last time we talked about heights and setbacks for those structures, so that's the added language there.
Is it appropriate with these kinds of discussions to ask if the public has any comment on what we're talking about?
It's whatever you want to do. It's your meeting.
Okay, well, I wonder if anyone in council chambers has any thoughts about what we've spoken about so far? Yeah, step up to the podium, please. Make sure the green light is on. Please state your name and address.
Sure. Benjamin Spencer, 8 Rust Avenue, Northampton, and thanks for having this discussion. It's been really interesting to hear tonight's and from 2 weeks ago too. And just from tonight, and in relation to some of the projects that have been before you recently, requiring a setback, I would think, to the project on State Street, the corner of State and Elm. Like, I don't know if there was anywhere for them to move back. So it might have meant that that project, I don't know, would even happen, right? Because that was a very tight space. And so if they had to move that 10 feet off the road to accommodate that covered parking, I'm not sure if it would happen. I don't know if that's fair, but that's just something that struck me. And if the idea is to, for density, I'm not sure. I don't know if a 5-story building 10 feet away from me is very different than a 5-story building that I'm standing next to anyways. So that was just a thought that I had, is like making sure the requirements don't necessarily take away the possibility of those housing units. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in council chambers? No? Okay, I'm gonna see if there's anyone on Zoom. So please use your raise hand function if you want to weigh in on any of the conversations we've had on the zoning language. Okay, I'm not seeing anything.
I don't see
You
anything.
guys, no? Okay. Thank you. All right, Carolyn, what else do we have to look at?
So the next, so gateway is basically the same. It mirrors the, what we were just discussing. But then at the bottom, whoops, I have just, had put the buffer landscaping section in, so you could see where that is. So the highlighted one, down in, J, where a buffer includes a wall or fence that is required screening height, the plantings may be reduced in quantity so long as there are deciduous or coniferous trees planted in the buffer, at least one per 25 linear feet along the boundary. So that was sort of in, still wanting to ensure that there are some vertical elements beyond the height of a fence. And then I just highlighted waiver again, sort of going back to that conversation when we started. If from last time you all wanted to see what that language was like, so I've just highlighted here. I'm not really proposing any changes except in the table. So, so that this is, well, unless you don't want a waiver, then we could, talk about deleting this section for transitional buffer waivers.
I'm sorry, I lost you, Carolyn. Where's that language that you're
It's
referring to?
highlighted down,
Yellow?
yeah, A4A. Page 7.
Right, yep, after J.
Mm-hmm. So this is under additional standards for district transitional buffers. The applicant may request that the planning board grant a waiver from the height and width requirements of a district transitional buffer. The planning board may grant the waiver when it finds the following. I mean, this is just granting the option for the board. Doesn't mean you're required to.
Yeah, I think it's fine to leave in the way, possibility of a waiver.
And that's it.
Thank you. A lot of fun, huh? One picture. Take care of it.
Yeah,
Right.
good job.
Well, it's just the start, right? Okay, I'm gonna stop to share. Okay.
You think that, the 50-foot, 50-foot. There's not a whole lot of difference. 10 feet,
You're stuck.
right now. So, yeah, no, I mean,
We can look at that when you all discuss the parking garage standards.
So what's the process moving forward from here? Do we
More work.
look at a final draft that we
Yeah.
recommend that do we have a public hearing maybe? Preliminary draft.
Yeah, so what I want to do is have some more time to look at the garage standards and then bring it back to another meeting. And then if you're ready, we can put it into formal ordinance. Planning board can, present an ordinance amendment to
Right.
city council.
Would we have a joint hearing with legislative matters?
Probably.
Yeah.
So what happens is then you say, this is what we'd like to present it to city council. It gets referred out for public hearing. Both the planning board and city council have to hold a hearing. This one, I think it makes sense to do a joint public hearing. And then it would come back to city council. City council will be new in January, so it'll take some time for organization. And so nothing would really probably be going anywhere until, end of January, beginning of February.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I don't know when I'll be able to get you the garage stuff, but I'll keep plugging away at it.
So moving on in our agenda, do we have any other items not anticipated at the time of posting? Any A&Rs or?
We have an A&R and the minutes. So I can screen share the A&R. Let me just pull that up.
Oh, can I ask a question first? There was you sent around a public comment related to a housing development. We don't need to, that doesn't
No, yeah,
pertain to us, right? We don't need to address.
not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Nothing's been submitted.
Okay.
Yeah, no. It was just requested to be sent, so sent it. Okay, so this is a really, this is just a land swap, this A&R. So this is out on Chesterfield Road, right before the West Hampton line. So the second to last property, before West Hampton. Old house here, so this has been reshaped a few times. But this little triangular piece, would go to house number 1031. It's currently goes with house 1051. So it's really just carving, drawing a line here and transferring this corner over to 1031. And this would all stay with this property owner.
So that the lot that the barn is on has no frontage.
It's
But
not a
it's
separate building
owned.
lot.
It's owned, oh, it's not a separate building lot.
No, it's owned by the
Same.
owners of 1051.
Yeah.
It's a weird lot.
So this
almost
was
like-
it wasn't originally carved up this way separate. The barn was part of 1051. And then there was an interest at the time of carving off the barn and giving it to 1031. And I guess that transaction never happened. So instead of the whole barn and parcel going to 1031, it appears that only the triangle will go to 1031. So,
Okay, well, it looks like this is not creating any new frontage.
right, no
Or any
lots.
roads.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to make an endorsement?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to endorse the A&R on Chesterfield Road. I don't know the number.
1031.
1031 Chesterfield Road.
A motion and a second. Can we have a vote by show of hands, please? Unanimous.
Great.
Okay, and then it sounds like we have some minutes, which I know everyone reviewed.
What were the dates again?
October 9th and 23rd.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of October 9th and October 23rd with no suggested edits.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Show of hands. Unanimous.
Woo-hoo.
All right, nicely done.
Second.
All right, motion to close the hearing has been seconded. Show of hands. All right, we are closed at